Who's Who in the U.S. Department of Energy Climate Science Report. Some insights from Friends of Science Society. Hi, I'm Michelle Sterling, Communications Manager for Friends of Science Society, and there's a new report from the U.S. Department of Energy on climate science, one that is far more nuanced and not catastrophic in nature. So I thought that perhaps people would like to know a bit more about the people behind the report, the authors of the report. So I went to the U.S. Department of Energy website, I found their biographies, and have incorporated them into this PowerPoint. I've also added in a few references for people to go and look at their work. Some of them are more scientific references, and others are simple PDFs that you can download yourself for free. So I think it's important that you know a bit more about these people because the media is attempting to smear the report as controversial, contrarian, and if you don't know anything about the authors, you might say, oh, well, the media, they must know what they're talking about. But we'll find out that's not quite true either. Anyway, let me show you what I found. So there's a new view of climate science. This is the report that was issued, a critical review of impacts of greenhouse gas emissions on the U.S. climate. And it's being touted as finally an unbiased and objective climate science report. And that's by Tim Gallaudet, who is Rear Admiral, U.S. Navy retired. He's a PhD vice chairman of the board of directors for Force Blue, former acting and deputy administrator of NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the States, acting undersecretary and assistant secretary of commerce, and oceanographer of the Navy. So he says the recent report released by Energy Secretary Chris Wright on the climate impacts of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States has caused quite a stir in the climate science arena. Outrage, pushback, and criticized are the words used in many of the headlines about it. For too long, the American people have been fed an unrealistic narrative that climate change is an existential threat that only drastic reductions in fossil fuel use will solve. Secretary Wright has finally got it right, and it's about time that the United States supports unbiased and objective climate science. So who's who? The Climate Working Group consists of these people, all of whom hold PhDs. The scientists hold PhDs: John Christy, Judith Curry, Stephen Koonin, Ross McKitrick, and Roy Spencer, and of course Energy Secretary Chris Wright put the team together. And Secretary Chris Wright, in the foreword to the document, says, "What I found is that media coverage often distorts the science. Many people walk away with a view of climate change that is exaggerated or incomplete. To provide clarity and balance, I asked a diverse team of independent experts to critically review the current state of climate science with a focus on how it relates to the United States." And those are his comments from the foreword of the report. And of course, here is the American Association for the Advancement of Science in their Science magazine, blasting out a headline: "Contrarian Climate Assessment from U.S. Government Draws Swift Pushback. Researchers say the Department of Energy report cherry-picks data to downplay the threat of greenhouse gases." So, about the report authors, let's look at them in alphabetical order. Here's John Christy. Dr. John Christy is a distinguished professor of atmospheric and earth science and Alabama's state climatologist at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. He has a BA in math from CSU Fresno, an MS and a PhD in atmospheric sciences from the University of Illinois in Champaign. He is a fellow of the American Meteorological Society and the recipient of the NASA Medal for Exceptional Scientific Achievement for constructing, with Dr. Roy Spencer, the first global atmospheric temperature data set from polar orbiting satellites. He served as lead author of the third IPCC assessment report, that's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in 2001. He co-authored the National Academy of Science Expert Report on Surface Temperature Reconstructions in 2006. He has served on the NOAA Climate Change Science Program, NASA's Earth Science Subcommittee, the National Research Council Space Studies Board, and the EPA Science Advisory Board. In addition, Dr. Christy has given testimony in 20 congressional hearings. And here's some of his earlier work. This is a very early book where he was a contributing author, Shattered Consensus, The True State of Global Warming. This is a more recent document that he wrote with Dr. Richard Lindzen. You can find this on the CO2 Coalition website and also on our website. I did just a stand-up reading of it for those who kind of like a podcast approach. The Global Mean Temperature Anomaly Record, How It Works and Why It Is Misleading. So he's quite a qualified fellow. Judith Curry. Dr. Judith Curry is Professor Emerita at the Georgia Institute of Technology, where she served as Chair of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences for 13 years. She is President and co-founder of Climate Forecast Applications Network, or CFAN. Curry has a PhD in geophysical sciences from the University of Chicago. She has authored or co-authored 192 peer-reviewed papers in atmospheric and climate sciences, 2 textbooks, and most recently the book Climate Uncertainty and Risk. Curry is a fellow of the American Meteorological Society, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the American Geophysical Union, and a member of the American Academy of Sciences and Letters. She has served on several science steering committees of the World Climate Research Program and also the Department of Energy Biological and Environmental Research Advisory Committee, Earth Science Subcommittee of the NASA Advisory Council, and the NRC Space Studies Board and Climate Research Committee. Dr. Curry has given testimony in 13 congressional hearings. Now, this report is downloadable from the Global Warming Policy Foundation, and it's kind of an overview of her book. So if you want the full meal deal, you can get her book, or you could just download this and have a look at it. She also gave a lecture on it, which is recorded and on the Global Warming Policy Foundation's website. And most famously, in 2014, Dr. Judith Curry testified to Senate hearings that carbon dioxide is not a control knob that can fine-tune climate. Another author is Stephen Koonin. The Honorable Stephen Koonin, Ph.D., is the Edward Teller Senior Fellow at Stanford's Hoover Institution. He has served as Undersecretary for Science at the Department of Energy from 2009 to 2011, as Chief Scientist for British Petroleum from 2004 to 2009, and as a professor at Caltech from 1975 to 2004, the last 9 years of which as President and Provost. Koonin is a member of the National Academy of Sciences and the Jason Group of Government Advisors, as well as a governor of Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, having served in similar capacities for the Los Alamos, Sandia, Brookhaven, and Argonne National Laboratories. Other prior roles include a university professor at New York University, a non-resident senior fellow at American Enterprise Institute, and a trustee of the Institute for Defense Analyses. Koonin has a Bachelor of Science in Physics from Caltech and a PhD in Theoretical Physics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He authored the 2021 bestseller, Unsettled: What Climate Science Tells Us, What It Doesn't, and Why It Matters, the 1985 textbook, Computational Physics, and some 200 peer-reviewed papers in physics and astrophysics, scientific computation, energy technology and policy, and climate science. So this is an image from PragerU. They have a little short video there you might want to have a look at on why there's no climate emergency. Or you may want to read his book, Unsettled, the one that I just mentioned. And again, there are also a number of different video presentations by him online on the Irish Climate Science Forum, to name one. And he's part of a number of climate science documentaries of late as well. Ross McKitrick, PhD. Dr. Ross McKitrick is a professor of environmental economics at the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada. He holds a BA in economics from Queen's University and an MA and PhD in economics from the University of British Columbia. He has published widely in both economics and physical science journals on topics related to climate change, pollution, and public policy. His book, Economic Analysis of Environmental Policy, was published by the University of Toronto Press in 2010. His background in applied statistics has led him to author or co-author peer-reviewed publications across a wide range of topics in the physical sciences, including paleoclimatology reconstruction, malaria transmission, surface temperature measurement, climate attribution methodology, and climate model evaluation. Professor McKitrick has made many invited academic presentations around the world, was an invited contributor to the 2006 National Academy of Sciences report on surface temperature reconstructions, and has served as an expert reviewer for the last 3 IPCC assessment reports, Working Groups 1 and 2, and has testified before the U.S. Congress and committees of the Canadian House of Commons and Senate. So this image is from the Fraser Institute. Dr. McKitrick has written a number of very good reports for Fraser Institute on a number of topics. He also co-authored this book some time ago, Taken by Storm: The Troubled Science, Policy, and Politics of Global Warming. His co-author was Christopher Essex. I bring this to your attention just to show that from a long time ago, many of these people saw that there were problems in how climate change was being evaluated with respect to how humans and GHG emissions were impacting climate change. This is a contemporary report from this year, Canada's Path to Net Zero by 2050, Darkness at the End of the Tunnel. So that's a free download from the Fraser Institute. And Dr. McKitrick also has his own website. You can go there and look at some other materials that he's prepared. Roy Spencer, PhD. Dr. Roy Spencer is a principal research scientist at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Atmospheric and Oceanic Science from the University of Michigan and an MS and PhD in Meteorology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Spencer's published research has focused on monitoring of weather processes and climate change from Earth-orbiting satellites, as well as using simple physical models for diagnosing climate sensitivity and climate feedbacks. As a NASA senior scientist for climate studies, he served as the U.S. science team leader for the Advanced Microwave Scanning Radiometer flying on the Aqua satellite, providing our most accurate global measurements of sea surface temperatures, sea ice, and several other features of the climate system. Along with Dr. John Christy, Spencer developed the first satellite-based technique for global temperature monitoring, for which they received NASA's Exceptional Scientific Achievement Medal and the American Meteorological Society's Special Award. So again, here's a very early book that he wrote, Climate Confusion, How Global Warming Hysteria Leads to Bad Science, Pandering Politicians, and Misguided Policies That Hurt the Poor. And this is another one that you can find on his website, along with a couple of others that he's written more recently. The Great Global Warming Blunder, How Mother Nature Fooled the World's Top Climate Scientists. So we also linked more resources about these people and this report on our blog. So if you look on our blog under There's Big News in the World of Climate Science, Science in Short, we did prepare a summary that's on video that you can look at. There's also a PowerPoint that just has the chapter summaries. And this graph comes from the full report. What's this all about? This is figure 5.9 of the DOE, Department of Energy Climate Report, Modeled versus Observed Warming Trends in the U.S. Corn Belt from 1973 to 2022. And what do we find here? These are all climate models. These are all simulations. And they're all projecting lots of warming, as you can see. But the actual observed temperatures, the real temperature data here, shows that the models are really running way too hot. So they're projecting a future of extreme heat that is not confirmed by the observed temperatures over this long period of time. Now back to the media coverage. Of course, this has received very little media coverage, always a scathing review, pretty much, other than the one that I opened with. And why is that? Well, there is a large group of journalists. This is an umbrella group called Covering Climate Now. It's about 500 media outlets, and they reach about 2 billion people, they claim. And they say, honoring the best climate journalism from throughout the newsroom. So that sounds pretty good, but actually when you look at one of their magazines, they said they're always looking for the allegory to tell the story about climate change. You'd think they'd be looking for the data and the science and the evidence, but no, they're looking for an allegory. So in order to get that allegory, they interviewed the director of Mad Max, who tells Kyle Pope how to make climate fear compelling. I don't think that that's really what the media should be doing. They're supposed to be reporting and not making things up. And you might say, but what about the 97% consensus? Well, as it turns out, that's not quite what they represent it as. And you can have a look at our report that we did, I think around 2014, that looks at the global warming math myths and the social proofs and the science of statisticulation. So have a look at this report. This will help you understand that 97% is not a consensus. And in fact, science is not a democracy. So consensus is irrelevant in science. Science is about inquiry and not compliance. So we may say, well, why is there all this climate hysteria? Well, it's being driven by well-funded campaigns and collaborations of the so-called climate cartel. And this is a fairly recent report, an interim report from the Republican House Judiciary Committee on antitrust violations. So it's called Climate Control, Exposing the Decarbonization Collusion in Environmental, Social, and Governance, ESG Investing. And one of the short summary statements from that report is that the climate cartel has declared war on the American way of life. The climate cartel is waging a global world war for net zero against disfavored American companies, including those in the fossil fuel, aviation, and farming industries that allow Americans to drive, fly, and eat. So it's worth having a look at this report. It's about 40 pages, as I recall, mostly plain language, and I think it's quite well summarized. You'll get the gist. So because we are concerned about the fact that agriculture is being affected, we're going to be running an event on September 25th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in Calgary at the Best Western Village Park Inn. We also have a live stream option if you're not in the area. And it's called Food Prices, Farming, and Net Zero Ideology. It will be presented by Dr. Joseph Fournier, who is a senior scientist and a rancher. So he knows what he's talking about. And if you'd like to know more about energy and climate statistics, please do order our book. This is specifically for Canada, although it's useful pretty much for anywhere in the world because there's lots of information in there that's not specific to Canada as well. But it covers 22 prominent climate topics. And it's a handy little book. It's 88 pages, $15 Canadian a book plus shipping. So you can get your books and your tickets. And remember, there's a live stream or in-person option for this event on September 25th. And you can just go to our website and find references to both of these items there. So I hope that's given you some insight into the people behind the recent Department of Energy report. I think the good thing is it's, to my mind, it's opened up the climate conversation, where for a long time people were afraid of being called deniers or contrarians, and other people who questioned the science didn't really have a document that they could look at and say, wait a minute, this supports my view that it's not a crisis, not a catastrophe, not an existential threat. So do read the report and feel free to put your comments down below, ask questions, and we'll try and give you links to more information. Also look at our blog because we do have that posting there with more links to presentations by these scientists. So thanks very much for watching this presentation. I hope to see you at our event, or that you'll see us online if you're doing the live stream version. And please consider ordering our book. For Friends of Science Society, I'm Michelle Sterling. Thanks for watching. See you next time.